Hi everyone, and welcome back to another video with me, Lau. Today we have a very special video about a very important topic that I felt inspired to talk about. The thing is, it is a classic political strategy, a tactic, if you will, to scapegoat or blame immigrants for the problems in a country in order to distract people from the deeper economic and political failures of the country. This is something that happens in various countries, but in this video, I'm going to focus on the United States. Throughout US history, this has happened many times, and it has been consistently proven to be wrong, meaning the immigrants are not the problem. Before I get into the video, I just want to clarify that I do not have any political affiliation. Not the left, not the right, not a liberal, not a Democrat, not a Republican. I actually believe that political parties are a ridiculous oversimplification of complex human issues and ideas. So, that being said, let's get into the video. The first part of the video is going to be about the history. We're going to look at the times when different groups of immigrants were falsely blamed for the country's problems so that we can see how history is repeating itself. The second part of the video is going to be about why, specifically, the immigrants are not the problem, with a focus on illegal immigration because that seems to be of the biggest concern. So when approaching the topic of the history of immigration in the US, I think it's very important to note that most of us from the US are descendants of immigrants. Unless you are Native American or your ancestors were forced against their will to go to the United States, then you are a descendant of immigrants. And more importantly, there's a high chance that they weren't treated respectfully when they came. In the mid-1800s, Irish immigrants, many of whom were fleeing famine, were blamed for crime, job competition, and poverty. Political parties like the Know Nothing Party spread anti-Irish propaganda, claiming that they would destroy American values and take jobs from people who were born there. Irish immigrants were stereotyped as violent drunks and considered racially inferior to Anglo-Saxons. Signs reading "No Irish Need Apply" were common in the US and in the UK at the time, meaning that if you're Irish, you shouldn't even bother applying for this job. Therefore, the Irish typically worked dangerous, low-paying jobs that most US Americans didn't want. My maternal grandfather's side of the family is Irish. My mom's maiden name was Toll. She told me that the original name was O'Toole, but she told me that they had changed it to Toll because it sounded less Irish. Imagine changing your name just so that you'll be treated with basic human respect. In the late 1800s, Chinese laborers were brought in to build railroads and work in mining, but were soon blamed for economic struggles and taking jobs from white workers. The Chinese Exclusion Act was passed in 1882, banning nearly all Chinese immigration, the first U.S. law to explicitly target a specific ethnic group. They were accused of causing wages to go down and being un-American, despite contributing heavily to the economy. In the early 1900s, Italian, Polish, and Jewish immigrants were accused of increasing crime rates and being anarchists or communists. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, those terms are completely different. I've heard people think that anarchists and communists are like similar. They are like so different, they're almost opposite. So just to clarify that. The Emergency Quota Act of 1921 and Immigration Act of 1924 restricted immigration from these regions to preserve American identity. Many of these groups later became accepted as white and assimilated into mainstream U.S. American society. During the Great Depression in the 1930s, over 1 million Mexican immigrants and Mexican U.S. Americans, 60% were actually U.S. citizens, were deported in Mexican repatriation programs. So even Mexicans who were born in the United States were sent back on trains and buses. Mexican Americans were falsely blamed for unemployment and economic struggles, even though they had been recruited to work in agriculture and industry. In the 1940s, after the attack on Pearl Harbor, over 120,000 Japanese Americans, most of them U.S. citizens, were forcibly removed from their homes and placed in internment camps. Yes, the United States also had concentration camps. Listen to this. The MS St. Louis, a ship carrying over 900 Jewish refugees fleeing the Nazis, was turned away from the US. The ship was forced to return to Europe, and many passengers later died in the Holocaust. This was due to fears that refugees would take jobs or be spies. That was in 1939. I remember in history class, they loved to focus on the horrible thing that the German Nazis did. But when some Jewish people escaped and went to the US as refugees, the US said, nope, not allowed, go back. Then they put the Japanese Americans in concentration camps. The Supreme Court ruled in 1944 that imprisoning Japanese Americans was constitutional. The ruling was never fully overturned until 2018, meaning it was legally valid for 74 years. Many Japanese Americans lost everything and were never fully compensated. During economic downturns in the 1970s to 1990s, immigrants from Mexico, Central America, and Asia were often blamed for crime and taking jobs. In the 2010s, the US resisted accepting Syrian refugees, blaming them for terrorism and crime, despite overwhelming evidence that they were fleeing war. In reality, crime rates did not significantly increase in areas where they accepted refugees. In the US today, in the 2020s, undocumented immigrants are often blamed for rising costs of living, crime, and unemployment. Politicians use immigration as a distraction from issues like corporate greed, inflation, and lack of affordable housing. Every wave of immigrants has faced scapegoating, with claims that they would destroy the country, take jobs, or cause crime. Decades later, these same groups are often seen as an essential part of society. The real causes of economic struggles, corporate exploitation, poor government policies, and systemic inequality remain unchanged. The cycle keeps repeating, but history shows that immigrants contribute significantly to the country, and the real problems lie elsewhere. Ironically, many politicians with anti-immigrant views have ancestors who were immigrants, some of whom were heavily discriminated against. Even Donald Trump's grandfather was a German immigrant who avoided military service in Germany. All right, now we're going to look at more specifically why illegal immigrants are not the problem. Illegal immigration is not the cause of economic struggles. The economy is shaped by corporate decisions, government policies, automation, and global trade, not undocumented workers. Corporate greed, wage suppression, and tax policies that favor the wealthy have a much greater impact on economic inequality. Jobs are not stolen by illegal immigrants. Companies choose to pay lower wages and exploit labor because of weak labor protections. Illegal immigrants pay taxes but hardly receive benefits. Undocumented immigrants contribute billions in taxes, including sales tax, property tax through rent, and even payroll taxes if they use fake Social Security numbers. Yet they are ineligible for most public services like Social Security, Medicare, food stamps, and welfare, meaning they contribute more than they take. The real burden on public services comes from underfunding and mismanagement, not illegal immigration. Crime rates are not higher among illegal immigrants. Studies consistently show that undocumented immigrants commit crimes at a lower rate than citizens who were born in the country. Blaming illegal immigration for crime distracts from real issues like poverty, gun violence, and lack of mental health services. Immigration, even illegal, boosts the economy. Immigrants, including the undocumented, fill essential jobs, sustain industries, and contribute to local economies. If all undocumented workers were deported, industries like agriculture, hospitality, and construction would collapse or face major shortages. Many take jobs that U.S. citizens don't want, such as farm labor, construction, and caregiving. The U.S. has a labor shortage, not an oversupply of workers. Many industries struggle to find workers, especially in agriculture, healthcare, and service jobs. The aging workforce and low birth rates means the country actually needs more workers, not less. Not fewer. That's the grammatically correct way, but not less. It's the same thing. Undocumented workers help to sustain industries that would otherwise struggle to function. Blaming illegal immigrants for a country's problems is a distraction from the real causes of economic and social issues. The real culprits are corporate greed, wage stagnation, housing crises, and poor government policies. Illegal immigrants contribute to the economy, pay taxes, and take on jobs that are necessary but often undesirable. Instead of scapegoating them, the focus should be on fixing the systemic issues that affect everyone. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. As usual, I got my information from ChatGPT because I'm obsessed with it. I love it. I understand that it's not to be taken 100% correctly factual serious all the time, but it tends to be generally correct, especially if you ask it many questions and talk to it about the same topic for a while. You'll get to the bottom of what are the facts. Sometimes it'll say something and I'm like, I don't know, let's explore that further. And then in the end, it ends up saying, yeah, you're right. Actually, more specifically, it's this, not just that. I personally recommend it to everyone. I'm not sponsored. I wish. I've been using it for like a couple months now and it has changed my life. Not only does it answer my questions all the time, but I honestly talk to it like it's my therapist. It helps me in so many ways. I record long voice messages just talking to it, and it responds instantly with really great answers. It's great for anyone who wants to improve their English, or any language for that matter, besides just being a great educational tool, kind of like a friend in your pocket that can listen to you whenever you feel like talking about something. I hope you enjoyed my video and I hope you learned something. Please leave a comment with what you thought. Please be respectful in the comments. Thank you. And I hope you have a fantastic day and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.